Welcome back to Rush Hour. This is a live look at the U.S. Capitol. All right, let's talk primaries. And former President Trump's influence on voters spoke volumes in Ohio's primaries, putting his political power back in the spotlight. He scored big wins, pulling venture capitalist JD Vance over the finish line in that Senate Republican primary. Also, one of Trump's former aides, Max Miller, clinched the nomination in a House race. Both Vance and Miller were endorsed by Trump, and it really highlights how valuable his backing is to candidates, and the numbers prove it. Trump had a high record in 2020 when it came to candidates he endorsed in general elections and battleground primaries, but will his political power hold this year? Getting us the answer, our D.C. insider, Washington Bureau Chief Mike Vaccaro. So, Vic, Ohio was a major primary. What other things can we take away from this race that could really foreshadow other primaries?
Yeah, I think we're learning a lot just from this first one, and it's 1 down and 3 to go, Nichole. The first Tuesday in May, there are 3 more Tuesdays, and major primaries set for every single one of them. JD Vance, of course, the best-selling author of the memoir Hillbilly Elegy, and a Trump acolyte, let's call him, endorsed by President Trump, won in a walk. A lot of us thought it was going to be a lot closer than it actually was. It sets up a match with Tim Ryan. He won the Democratic nomination. The Youngstown area Democrat. He represents Youngstown here in this big building behind me, the U.S. Capitol. They're set to face off in November. It's going to be a race that tells us a lot about who's going to ultimately control the United States Senate. And joining me right now, somebody who was keeping a close eye on this race, Julia Manchester, national political reporter from The Hill. Julia, you wrote 5 takeaways from this race. And I just want to point out one thing when we talk about Trump's influence. Look at the races, the candidates, the Republican candidates who weren't endorsed by President Trump, but still sort of kissed the Trump ring. They were talking about Donald Trump, adhering to Donald Trump's principles. They were sort of Trump acolytes, I keep calling them. From J.D. Vance, 32%, Josh Mandel, 24%, all the way down to Jane Timken at 6%. A combined 73% of the Republican electorate in Ohio voted for Trump candidates or candidates that were aligned with Donald Trump. The only one that wasn't, we thought he was going to come make a late charge. It didn't happen. Matt Dolan, 24%. So it's undeniable. Trump was a major reason why J.D. Vance, former President Trump, got over the finish line well ahead of the competition.
Yeah, it's undeniable, but also I think Trump really drove turnout on the Republican side. I mean, if you look at the turnout between the Democratic side and the Republican side, I mean, it's almost no comparison. Republicans just turned out en masse in Ohio, and that's obviously a good sign if you're maybe Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, for example, or Katie Britt in Alabama. Yes, of course. But at the same time, I want to talk about Matt Dolan for a second. You know, he is someone who had been trailing in the polls for a while. He's been critical of President Trump, especially his claims of election fraud, but he did very well.
Came in third place.
Yeah, winning the suburbs of Cleveland itself. He's from the Cleveland area, so it makes sense. Columbus, parts of Columbus at least, of course, with that third seat, Cincinnati, Vance won.
I want to get to that because I think that the divisions, one of your takeaways, divisions within the Republican Party also revealed by this race. And going forward, what are the implications for Pennsylvania and for Georgia?
You know, when we look at these areas, these suburban areas outside of, let's say, a Columbus or a Cleveland, we saw that Matt Dolan, someone who doesn't like Donald Trump, who didn't align himself with Donald Trump, he did very, very well. And I think that should spell trouble for some of these other Trump-aligned candidates like Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania, maybe suburban Philadelphia, suburban Pittsburgh. It could show that there is still some suburban discontent with the former president.
You talked about turnout. I want to put up the Tim Ryan and J.D. Vance graphic there. Tim Ryan, the Democratic nominee, got almost the same number of votes, but 73% of the Democratic vote. J.D. Vance had almost the same number of votes, but just 32%. So what does that tell you? Republicans fired up, showing up at the polls. Democrats, not so much. Okay, what does it tell us about what's going to be talked about in the general election? Again, looking forward to Georgia, into Pennsylvania, into Nebraska. There's a populist theme here coming from both parties.
There is a populist theme coming from both parties, but when we look in particular at Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, even Missouri, you have this theme of the working class voter. This is a voter that was voting Democratic for a while until 2016, very much swung towards Donald Trump. But at the same time, during the Trump administration, you saw candidates like Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown continue to win that vote.
The liberal senator from Ohio.
This is a voting bloc that goes back and forth. And you are going to see JD Vance and Tim Ryan very much competing for this vote.
Yes, the working man vote.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
so interesting, and it really does illustrate the evolution of the Republican Party over the course of the last 6 years, since the advent of President Trump, really. Okay, you write about so many interesting things in politics. Really give us an inside scoop on a lot of it. You're writing now about a race in Texas, a congressional race. The incumbent down there, a border district,
Yes.
Henry Cuellar. It's like the last of the anti-abortion Democrats in Congress, along with the Senator Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, and it's not entirely clear where he stands. But tell us about this race now in the wake of this Alito draft memo and the incredible earthquake that we're feeling in the American political scene because of it.
Right. So Congressman Cuellar has not exactly been embraced by the establishment publicly, but they are very much backing him privately. He's being primaried by progressive Jessica Cisneros. She has continuously hammered him over his stances on abortion, saying he is not, he's too pro-life, he's not liberal enough on the issue. Now, this district's interesting because it's got a high Hispanic population, a high Roman Catholic Hispanic population.
Cuellar is very much hard line on immigration on the southern border,
yes,
right?
He's very,
as a Democrat.
Exactly. And I think this population in this district, which leans probably socially conservative on issues like abortion or even the border, that's where it benefits Cuellar. But then Jessica Cisneros, for example, can very much galvanize some of the northern part of the district, San Antonio, that region. That's where the population center is, to galvanize them to come out.
A great microcosm of where we are in American politics on a couple of issues, on abortion and on the southern border, two hot-button issues heading into November. Nichole, we got a lot to talk about over the course of the next month, and we're just getting started.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Vic. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.